Yeah.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Gerardo Salgado, and I am enjoying some tea this morning because um, I just reunited with my friends Liz, Catherine, Eric, other and other friends that may come later on. Um, and we are here with Ava Dellaira, so please welcome Ava. Ava was born in Los Angeles, California, and she grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Her first memory of writing comes from second grade. She fell in love with poetry and then decided to use her language to tell stories at a very young age. She studied a degree in the University of Chicago and received her Master of Fine Arts in Poetry later on in the Iowa Writers Workshop. Back to Los Angeles a few years after that, she worked with her dear friend Stephen Chbosky, the author, writer, and director of The Perks of Being a Wallflower, as an associate producer of the film. Stephen's advice inspired Ava to begin this writer phase that we all know, and this is why you may know her debut novel Cartas de Amor a los Muertos, as well as her YA, Quienes Solíamos Ser. Her novels are now available in most countries around the world, and this is why she attended several author visits in Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, Mexico, and many cities throughout the United States. Now that she is blessed with a family of her own, we are gathered today to talk about her most recent release and our May pick, Exposure or Cuando Lo Pierdes Todo, available in Spanish language. Brought to you to, brought to you by Plata Editores and Urano Publishers. So here she is.
Hey guys, it's so nice to be with you all this morning to see all your beautiful faces. What time is it where you guys are?
It is 10 a.m. in the
Oh,
morning.
okay, still morning. Yeah.
Yeah, it is also morning. And I believe it's a great thing to start the weekend.
Yes, thank you. I do too. I'm still out of breath because I was just outside running with my daughter this morning. She likes to go running with me. She's only 7, but she's just faster than I am already.
Um, Kids are faster, always. Well, last year, Ava, I was listening to a podcast interview in which you mentioned that the outline for Cuando Lo Pierdes Todo came to your mind since your first pregnancy,
Mm,
around a decade ago. By
yeah.
then, you were promoting, if I'm not mistaken, In Search of Us or Quienes Solíamos Ser.
Yeah,
And by that time, we were in totally different stages of life. It's amazing to witness
I
your
know.
your comeback in the bookish world.
Thank you.
How do you feel? How do you feel? Because I know it's not like this year's release because it came out in September last year in English language, but how have you been feeling about this release so far?
Well, comeback is a really interesting phrase to use because, in a lot of ways, it does feel like I'm coming back to that part of myself who is a writer who needs to tell stories, who needs to connect with readers. Um, as you mentioned, I first got the idea for that book when I was pregnant with my daughter. And as I just told you guys, she's 7 now. So it's been, I think in motherhood, I almost, in the early parts of motherhood, at least, sort of like retreated into myself. I mean, it also coincided with COVID and so much going on in the world. So, in a lot of ways, I feel like I wrote that book inside of this like secret cave that was like, what my life felt like at times. And so having the book come out has been this interesting opportunity for me to sort of also step back into the world and find my readers. And so doing things like this with you guys means a lot to me.
I'm glad that you're feeling so happy because I know that you have been like very busy with your family, and it is always good to know that someone is devoted to their craft just the way you are. And we are always going to be here waiting for your next books. So,
Thank you.
yeah, well, in Cuando Lo Pierdes Todo, I'm glad that you revisit certain elements that made me fall in love with your writing and your stories since the beginning. I even take some notes. Some notes. Juliette's poetry career remind me a bit of Laurel's poem in Love Letters to the Dead in Cartas de Amor a los Muertos. Even there's an appearance of the magnetic poetry kit that
Yes.
appears as a present. Yeah.
You're very good close reader.
Some art locations, museums in Los Angeles. I believe that those are a reminiscence of Angie's road trip in Cuando Lo Pierdes Todo.
Mhm.
The similar parallel story of Marilyn and Angie in that same book, in which we go back and forth about Juliet's, Angie, Noah, and Jesse's stories.
Yeah,
The main girls in your three novels are dealing with the grief and loss of a parent, a relative, a beloved one in a totally unique way, and that significant moment in their lives modifies their context.
yeah.
But even mentioning that, these beautiful parallels, Cuando Lo Pierdes Todo is a completely new craft, and it has a darker tone even. So I would like to know if in some way you will ever like to make a crossover between the three books.
A crossover? You mean one that combines all three?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I seem like I am drawn to certain themes that do continue to reappear. Grief, of course, like you mentioned, which has been such a big part of my life and my growing up. I think you guys probably all know already that I wrote Love Letters to the Dead just after losing my mother. And my father died during the time I was writing Cuando Lo Pierdes Todo. So that grief was, fresh again, and becoming an adult, being at the beginning of forming my own family at the same time as losing the family that I grew up, the people who knew me when I was a baby, the people I grew up with, felt like a really specific kind of thing. And like you said, there are definitely more darker, more adult elements in this book that I was growing up as I was writing it. And I love talking to readers like you guys because I feel like in a lot of ways we've kind of, grown up together. Like my first readers of Love Letters to the Dead are no longer, teenagers. And it's really cool and interesting to me that, I don't know, that we've been able to kind of evolve together. My daughter has told me that she wants me to write a book for her and her brother. So at some point,
Oh,
I will try to write another, either depending on when I get it done, like children's book or another younger YA book that they can enjoy. Because she's very interested in me being a writer. But of course, my work is very much not age appropriate. So one day I'll write something, another kids thing.
this is the amazing part of being a writer, that you suddenly remind that you have free will and that you
Mm,
can explore like different genres, children books, YA, fiction, even
yeah.
horror, I don't know, like Stephen Chbosky with Imaginary
Oh
Friend.
yeah, that was really cool and interesting. How it was like a total departure, but still so much his voice.
Yeah, yeah. And as you said, it is interesting how and by we I mean you as an author and we as the readers, we are in this together in many ways. For instance, well, I talk about the similarities that I found with the previous books, but besides your comments on creativity and the importance of fighting for your dreams, this book talks about resilience in many aspects, like being resilient in grief, being resilient at work, being resilient during a hard time. And this is like an adulthood experience. But at the same time, you are with us together when you remind us that there were like books as In Search of Us or Love Letters to the Dead. And you talk about your own experience as well in motherhood. I was very glad that even Jesse is on tour in Guadalajara. When I read that part,
Oh yeah, right.
I was very impressed that you make Jesse follow your same path in a similar way.
Yeah.
So it is something that only the first readers might notice, I believe.
Yeah. That was really, I loved when you pointed that out. I was like, oh, you know. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. Absolutely. That wasn't an accident.
No, and also, guys, if you haven't checked her website, she has a lot of pictures with previous book fairs and book tours and book presentations in those cities. So it very much feels like you're watching Jesse's blog.
Yeah.
Well, also something that I would like to talk about here, talking about Cuando Lo Pierdes Todo. Juliet becomes like a ghost in the life of the rest of the characters. And this is something that appears since the very beginning. So it is like a terrible hook that you got for the rest of your reading. But also Juliet is a very interesting character because even though she's dead since the first pages, she lives in the memory of everyone, not only the main characters, but like suddenly everyone in Los Angeles knows about her and her mother,
Yeah.
and they know their pictures,
Yeah.
and it makes you feel connected to someone who is not like in this place.
Yeah.
Also, Juliet, she's a lover, the way you write about how she has a deep love that does not need for a label to be felt. I think
Yeah.
it's something very powerful that you are exploring in this book. Because if I make any comparison, Laurel or Angie or even Marilyn in the other books, they struggle with love in
Yeah.
many ways. So it feels very much this adulthood phase. Um, so I'm glad that you are finally finding your your own ways of expression and your own path. The things that you haven't explored, that you're taking them now and making them yours.
Thank you. That's so beautifully said. I don't even know what to add.
Well, maybe we can start with some questions from your own experiences, you guys. If you would like to start with, we have plenty of time. So, who would like to go first? Liz, Kathy, or Eric, or someone, or my sister Charlene, who is also here. I don't know. Come on,
Liz
guys,
wants
don't be nervous.
to
Me.
Liz.
Well, I'm excited that you are here with us. Cuando Lo Pierdes Todo has been a great return to reading for me because my life as a reader goes back to a little Katie reading love letters to death.
Oh,
And personally, it was a before and after for me. So many thanks. And um, I remember perfectly because I fell in love with that in the first book. And that was just that romantic way that you have to write and that generates sense of belonging of this universe that was talking about Gerardo. It's a one universe, and I have a question. How do you generate that sense to this belonging to that universe?
that's so that's such a beautiful question, and it makes me feel so happy that you feel that sense of belonging when you're reading the books. That's absolutely what I want when I'm writing. It's hard to really know how I generate it, but writing is such an immersive experience for me. Like I just sink all the way into the world. I also use like memory. I have very strong sense of memory as a writer. So I'm terrible at like remembering where I put my car keys or like, the general like stuff that you need day to day. But as far as like going back to the past, memories are almost as tangible for me as the present. And so sometimes writing is like a way of also inhabiting my own memories. Definitely in Love Letters to the Dead, that was very much so. Like I was right back. Yeah, I was already living in Los Angeles, but I really at the time missed New Mexico and the city where I grew up. And like I said, I'd lost my mom recently. Like I missed that whole world, and missing her made me miss the world that I'd lived in when she was here. So I could kind of like bring it back to life in my writing. And even in Cuando Lo Pierdes Todo, it's like a similar, I could go back to these like different times and places in my memory. Like my husband and my first, like when we first moved in together, our first apartment, being like young, struggling, right, like having these dreams of being writers and like trying to figure out how to sort of survive in LA in the meantime, and all of the kind of romance that can go along with that. Annie and Juliette, like that Topanga world was not really like, it was imaginary, but it was so also vivid for me, like almost as if it were a memory, although it was made up. I think sometimes I do experience parts of writing that way. Like it kind of epitomized girlhood for me. So I guess in that sense, I felt like very connected to it. I think also my background in poetry, like just it it gives me a proclivity to really pay attention to like just the tangible stuff of the world, the images that are in our lives all the time, the sounds, the smells, the feeling, the all of that.
So thank you.
Thank you for the question. That's a really lovely question, and I love that I love knowing that we started this relationship back with Love Letters to the Dead. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy. It was lovely. As you said, we can notice, Ava, the way that you pay attention to the little details, um, how the nature interacts with the characters in the story. That makes you feel like you are there. Sorry. Who would like to go next? Liz.
Well, hi, first of all, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
This is my first impression of you. So this was like, I mean, I already knew about Letters to the Dead, but I I like I hadn't like catch the mood, I was like, well, it's a YA, so I didn't really feel like connected to the story, so I never read it. But
Yeah.
I have friends who do it, and it was like, I don't know, it was like kind of intriguing in some ways because I really didn't knew what it was about, but the title like called me up, and I was like always in this back and forth of if I read it or not, and maybe I'm gonna do it after this because well, I feel like connected to you in the sense of um in the past like 10 years I also have lost people, and grief, it has been like such a interesting topic for me because the first like approaching I have to grief was with my grandmother, and she passed away when I was a teenager. So I didn't like understand my feelings at the
Yeah.
moment. So I didn't like process that away. But like 5 years after that, I started writing. And when I did that, I write my first story. And it was like this story about a couple, and one of them died. And it was like this whole journey. And recently, well, the story was finished up. I was done with it. I read it maybe pretty bad or pretty quickly because it was my first story. So um, recently I had another loss, another impactful loss, and I was like, I can't even look back at my first story, like it has such a, I don't know, a impactful sense to me, and it was like very real, everything I write in there, and I kind of lock away that. But now with exposed and with listening to you and meeting you, and I in the last couple of months I had like these feelings that I want to go back there and and like write it and stuff, because I hadn't felt brave enough to do it. But this just like pushed me to do it, because
I'm so
it's
happy.
like I feel like it's an homage in some kind of ways, like you said. And so yeah, thank you for that.
I'm so sorry to hear. I'm so sorry for your loss. It's
Thank you.
like it's such a
Yeah,
such a specific and deep kind of pain. I'm so sorry you're going through that. And I do, for me, writing is definitely like one of the best ways to heal from grief. There are some parts of it that never go away, but sometimes it can feel like there's no words for what you're feeling. And I think the process of finding words is like it can be really healing, because then it's not just all inside of you. Like it can be outside in the world and in a space, whether you share the story with one friend or whether you publish a book, like you're no longer totally alone with it. And then you have the opportunity to like connect with other people who, like you and I, who both know what that experience of grief is like.
yeah, yeah. It's just like a very cathartic thing to
Cathartic.
write about it. Yeah.
I agree.
And so I have two questions. The first one is about a certain a specific character in the book that that we like keep track in, and it's Noah.
Mm-hmm.
Noah was such an interesting character to read, because Jesus, it's it's complex, but also feels like I don't know. I picture him like I kind of mirror myself in him, because he has this thing with failure that impact that resonate with me at the moment I was reading this, because I've been passing through a lot lately in my life. And anyway, and it was like, okay, you're passing through this, and I understand this, but why are you acting this way and making these decisions just to reach your goal? And I was so frustrated by that and so angry by the end. And anyway, I would you like to talk to us about like how it was like writing that, drafting that?
Yeah, well, I think it was important to me in writing this book that all of the characters felt human and relatable. and that people we can have empathy for, but not perfect, if that makes sense. Because I don't believe that people, human beings are flawed, and we do make mistakes, and we do, sometimes cause harm, and intentionally or unintentionally. I would say that it was unintentional in Noah's case, and yet it happened, and he was, is responsible for that. I think that we live in a world where, so often human beings just kind of get like flattened to headlines or tweets or clickbait or whatever. And people are, automatically asked to choose sides, like your team this or your team that, or you're consuming these kind of stories in a way that, just doesn't leave a lot of space to like really look for the human beings behind the headlines, if that makes sense, to see the true complexities of the people. And I think that it's so important to not flatten each other, especially as social media becomes more and more our public squares. I think we have to just be able to leave room for the shades of gray that most of us live inside of, not everything. There are some cases of black and white. There are, of course, there are crimes that have been committed, criminals, cases that, that are very, very black and white, very clear. There are monsters out there. Like, I want to be careful to say that too, but in a lot of cases, there are a lot of gray areas, and I don't think we have to give up our own sense of morality or justice in order to also be willing to like see the nuance in things and see that there might be more than one thing that can be true at the same time. And I think as far as creating like, kinds of lasting change that a lot of us would like to see, it does require being willing to wade into the messy gray spaces a lot of the time. So that's a very broad answer. Noah was like my favorite character to write. I loved him dearly. And like, maybe he was also one of my favorite characters to write because he is flawed and he does do like things that are not great that will make some readers very angry. It's also been interesting to hear like the responses from readers where really people feel like really different ways after reading the book. Like some people are very like,
I was like,
I'm so mad at Noah, like he's, other people are like, oh, Annie, like I can't stand her.
Oh my God, no, my poor girl, no.
So it's really
don't get me started with her.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. It was really, I meant to write it. I love them all equally and deeply, and I kind of meant to write it in a way where like different people might read it different ways, and there's no sort of like very clear. There is a lot of gray space. It was terrifying. It was like a really scary book to write. It was like, for most of the time I wrote it, like just sort of had to pretend that nobody would ever read it, because it does deal with like really hard things that are really hard to talk about. And that you're if you step too far in one direction, then, you can cause like, the last thing, of course, I ever would want to do as an author is cause any harm. So it felt like a very sort of tightrope of a writing process. But ultimately, I did feel like it was a risk that was necessary to take, because I think that being able to empathize with perspectives outside of our own is like one of the great powers of fiction, right? Both as a reader and a writer. And it felt like a worthwhile project to me in that sense, I guess.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's just, I think, like you said, every character is like a world. And I also like catch on the They are like phases of grief.
Yeah.
So my next question is this one: if which phase do you think everyone is like? If you had to like put a name on, I don't know, on Noah, on Juliette, on
I'm not sure that I would know how to distill it to like a single word because they are so shaded, but I think you're right to say they are all different sides of grief. And Noah, I mean, another thing I can say about him as a character is, I mean, and Juliette too, like a lot of them is, you can see what happens when there is trauma that is like unsolved or buried. That's the way trauma works. It continues to come out in these other ways that you're sometimes not even conscious of. So I would say for me, that's part of like what makes Noah flawed, but in my opinion, forgivable, is that he is the things he's doing, he doesn't always like they're existing like on a like below the level of consciousness, right? It's these old childhood like wounds and traumas that are expressing themselves because he hasn't brought them to light and like dealt with them. So that's kind of like another part of the message of the book, I guess, is just the like the
go
ways
to
that
therapy.
work that way if we don't bring them out. And so like in some ways that's what this book is also trying to do, is just like, you know, shine some light on those traumas so that it doesn't have to exist like in the shadows, and then they can be talked about and potentially solved instead of, you know, guiding our actions in these like sort of invisible ways, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Well, thanks. You're
Yeah, sorry. I didn't notice. Um, I believe that, you know, living in postmodernity makes us, the social media users, face this reality or this second reality. Like you've got this doppelganger in social media, and the more you dive into the social media, the more you become someone who is like a celebrity, or if you share too much in that second space, you are exposed to many judgments of other people. And I'm glad that besides criticizing, well, making a critic on the cancel culture, you are really talking about how it hurts people. You are not only attacking someone in the seek of justice, you are also affecting their beloved ones, their families. And that is a very interesting um, like topic to discuss when you realize that it's more deep than that. And that is one of the reasons why the book ends the way it does. That you just want to leave everything behind, that you want a new start after all the toxicity, after all the hurt, and because people think they know the people based on their past mistakes or based on what they see through the screen, but it's not really all that. So yeah, I think it is something powerful to say that it's not just about standing one side or the other. You know, at the end of the day, you are not going to meet the just one truth. So I'm glad, and it is an interesting thing for your reading experience when you are into the book, because just when you think that you are standing with Noah because of his past, because of his struggles, then he does something that makes you hate him. And then you say, no, and he is right. Jesse is right. And then, it is this kind of like this kind of path that you walk by. And it is when you realize that sometimes that toxicity is so normalized in our lives that we love to hate.
Yeah.
So it is like an introspection, um, not only for like being a reader, but as a user in the social media world.
Yeah, doppelganger is like a really great and interesting word for it. We do have these doppelgangers, these like alternate versions of self, right? And the lines between what someone can see on the screen and who we really are, a little different for everybody, right? Based on how much of yourself you share, but they're always there. You can never see the full human exactly, I don't think, even if you can see a lot of somebody. And so, but I think more and more we can sometimes identify ourselves as that person. We have like all of these anxieties about like how we're painting ourselves or how we're presenting ourselves. It's interesting. And I think with cancel culture, like for me, it's important to say that it does exist in that gray space too, in my opinion. Like it's not all bad. The Me Too movement is really necessary and powerful. And like, how else could could women have, started to try to change, the culture, be it, mild sexual harassment at work or like, real assault in order to try like all of, that was so important and necessary. And same with, racial justice movements
The BLM, yeah.
online and like, being able, like all of that is, I think, essential. And like, there's also some unnecessary harm that comes along in cancel culture, and it can go too far sometimes. And a lot of these people who have made, sometimes egregious mistakes are also still people, like you said, with families and with lives and with past and with histories. And so I think like holding space for both of those things is really important. It's not, the book isn't meant to be like a takedown of cancel culture exactly. But it's meant to be like infusing nuance into it, right? And how can we use these tools that we now have, like this public square of social media, that can, the good thing about it is that it can lend power to people who have historically been powerless in public spaces, or at least have had less power in public spaces. So how can we take that good and then also like refine so that, that we're not creating more harm, or that we're not flattening each other, that we're not just seeing, somebody's avatar, but like leaving space for a whole complex person. And I don't know that I have the answers, but I did feel like it's an important space for us to be able to look at and talk in.
You're totally right. And this is a this is a kind of thing that we would like to well, sometimes we don't like to learn, but it is necessary. Reading something from the chat, my friend Eric said that I related or I connected with Noah and Jesse because they have a difficult life like writers, or as in the writer's job, with the daily routine and their personal battles. He says, I think that writer's life is both complicated and beautiful. Yes. I mean, I'm not a writer myself yet, but I imagine like as any job um, in the celebrity life, because now we need to face it. Writers need to become like social media celebrities to promote reading. Um,
It's honestly that's been like, when you're talking about social media, I was thinking about that, like how uncomfortable that part of it is for me. Um, like connecting one-on-one with readers on social media, if people send me DMs or like, comments on stuff, like I love hearing from readers. That part of it is beautiful. and I love connecting with readers. But like, as far as like, putting myself out there in that way, I'm like, I became a writer because I like to like, be alone in a room with a closed door and like a computer screen and like be inside the world of this story. Like, I'm such an introvert. I'm really shy in a lot of ways. And so it's interesting to think about that. And I don't know, this desire to be seen and not seen, and this like desire to be seen but fear of being seen, that I think I'm kind of like coming to terms with in myself right now, of like, okay, like I do really want my books to get out there. Like I really want them to be read. I really want people to find them. And now it does feel like becoming a social media sort of, I mean, maybe short of celebrity, maybe not, but like putting yourself out there is just sort of part of it now. It's part of the job, part of how you find readers. So I don't know, maybe it's a good challenge for me to get more comfortable with being seen in different ways and not just through my work or my words.
You're right. Well, I've got this question from Nat, our dear friend in Morelos City. She could not join this morning, but there's one question that she would like to ask Ava, and it is, what advice or tips would you give to your past self with what you know now about writing and publishing?
That's a really good question. I think at the time I started writing love letters to the dead was the time when I was like in the zone that I needed to be in, which was becoming like brave enough to face hidden parts of myself on the page, I guess. My own histories of trauma, my own ghosts, my own grief. Before that, yeah, there's just, of course, when you're like a writer who's struggling or who hasn't been published yet or who hasn't found your readership, there's like a lot of hunger and longing to be seen, to be read, to connect with readers. And of course, I experienced that early on, like starting in high school, probably when I like sent out all of my poems to, I'd like have to pay, I like saved money from a summer job to like pay the submission fees to send poems to literary magazines. And like, I just felt sure somebody would take one of them, and nobody did. And, those experiences of rejection are really painful. They're hard, and they're part of being a writer. You're going to encounter them at really every stage of the process, and have to find ways to push forward. And I think the ways that you push forward is staying connected to the deep sort of need or calling in you that's like, okay, this is part of the blueprint of who I am. I have to write. And I can never give somebody the advice like, don't care what happens, or like don't care if you get pub, because that's not realistic. Like everybody wants to be read, but also just stay connected to the part of you that exists beneath that, that's writing because you need to write, because you're a writer, because you know that you're a writer.
Thank you very much for all your inspirations and your beautiful replies. I mean, it is a great way to, make more of this story. And well, guys, if you haven't read Quienes Solíamos Ser or Love Letters to the Dead, Cartas de Amor a los Muertos, please don't hesitate and grab a copy, because you're going to crave for more. I can assure you that. And it is very soon for you, and I don't mean to be like a pain for you in asking what's coming, what else can we get? because it takes time, and I know that. Um, but is there anything that you would like to write about in the future besides the children's book for your kids?
I think I'll probably also write about motherhood in some way, shape, or form, especially those early phases of motherhood that were sort of started just to be touched on in exposure. But I tend to like to write about the phases of life I've just passed. So, like, for me now, my kids are 3.5 and 7, and they're older, but that, like, man, those early days, like when you have like a baby and a toddler, it is so specific and it is so intense. And it's something that I would like to find a way to write about, and in a way that's like also, entertaining. And I'm working on some ideas for it. I'll say that.
Pouring all that love, isn't it? Like
What did you say?
pouring out that love, like all the
Yeah.
love.
Yes, all
Yeah,
the
because here we like saw the love, but also like the struggles and the desperation and the new coming of this
exactly.
like kind of challenge. Because
Yeah. It's like more love than you've ever felt
Mhm.
before, and you're like the love is so intense. And there's also, at least for me, there's this real like there's like this identity sort of shift or crisis, or like you sort of sometimes no longer know like where you are.
Yeah,
um and then you find it again. But like most intense experiences, when you're in it, you don't realize that like the other side is there. It's just right there.
yeah,
But when you're in it, you don't know that. So
yeah. It's overwhelming.
yeah.
Well, thank you everyone who joined us this morning. And thank you, Ava, for making room for us in your own home. We're in very different places, but we are connected through space and time. So it is kind of wonderful. And before we go, would you like to take a picture together?
Yes, I would love to.
You will grab your copies. I am going to have hold Quienes Solíamos Ser because I believe it matches my shirt. And my sister is going to pose with Cuando Lo Pierdes Todo.
Let's see. I don't even know if they sent me one. I have to use exposure. I have to use the English. No, they do. I should have. Yeah. I think mine is in my house. Sorry. I'm in my we have an office in the back, but my Cuando Lo Pierdes Todo is inside. I'll use this.
It's okay. I love the cover, by the way. Did you like more your cover in Spanish edition or the exposure in English?
I love them both in different ways. I thought they did a really great job. Leo, my editor, who
Hmm.
I love, he was like the first editor to bring Love Letters to the Dead to Latin America.
Hmm.
And then he changed jobs and moved to Spain, and then was the one also who bought this for Spanish translation. And so I've known
Hmm.
him for like many years, and he's great. So he consulted me on the cover for Cuando Los Pierdes Todo, and we worked together a little on it. He took my little sort of like suggestions, which I really appreciated, and I really love how it came out.
It's good. It's good to know that you participated in the process.
Yeah, it's nice. You don't always get that opportunity, so I felt lucky.
Yeah. Well, so here we go. Thank you very much for getting your copies. Also, thank you everyone who is going to watch this recording later. To all the readers that joined but couldn't, well, join the body reading, but could not join this meeting. I hope that we can get to see Ava in our country at some point.
Me too. We really want to come back to Mexico.
No, so you're always welcome.
Thank you. We're
If
gonna
you,
work on that. I have to see when there's another book fair and when we can figure something out.
well, so I know that it seems so far away right now, but Filo Guadalajara, it's at the end of this year, and we're halfway through the year so far. So
That's
it's
not
not
that far.
that far.
Yeah, that's not that far.
Hopefully we get to see you. So yeah, thank you again, Ava. It means the world. I, you know, it makes me so nostalgic and so happy to be here with you to share this conversation. When I first started reading your novels with my sister, we attended your book presentations like here in our city. But little did we know that a day like this could take place.
Oh, sweet. Thank you. That means a lot to me.
So goodbye, everyone, and have a lovely weekend. And send our greetings to your family, Ava. I hope that your kids, you and your husband are doing great, that you keep enjoying life, and you know, blessings to LA.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate it.
Thank you, and bye bye, Liz. Bye, Eric,
Bye bye.
and Cher,
Bye.
and
Nice
everyone
meeting
in the
you.
book club.
Bye.
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 Thank you.